was analyzing and improving the old Newcomen engines. The year before Boulton and Watt went into production, Smeaton built the most powerful and most efficient engine in the world. As a result, another century passed before Watt's condensing engines could completely displace the older ones. Smeaton also won prizes for scientific work on energy conservation, in the collision of inelastic bodies, as well as in water, wind, and steam-power-driven machinery. He did so much, and we might well wonder what genie from what bottle had been at his side. Well, I think I know. Smeaton never managed from afar. He did his own drafting, and his drawings were works of art. He based his fees on time spent, never on project costs. He achieved greatness, but never embraced greatness. He was an artist before he was an expert. He had the humility needed to stay curious. He was, quite simply, the soul of the English Revolution, that is, of the industrial revolution of the human lot. I'm John Lienhardt at the University of Houston, where we're interested in the way inventive minds work.
A transcript of this Engines of Our Ingenuity episode number 2194 is online at uh.edu/engines. Additional episodes are available by podcast.
.8:50 a.m. It is Monday morning, which means time for our Monday Reboot segment. That's when I get to talk technology with Lewis Campbell from Cintigy Computer Systems. He is joining us live on our video connection this morning. Lewis, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us, and thanks for being here. Let's talk about what's been going on in the news. The one thing that caught my attention was we talked about it a few weeks ago, and that is the young man who was tracing, I guess, through a computer algorithm, the flights of Elon Musk's private jet, and he's now turned his attention to the Russian oligarchs' super yachts. Have you seen that?
Yeah, a little bit about that. Yeah,
Right.
that's been interesting, and he seems to be basically using the same method and having some success there.
Indeed. And so, again, he's able to, I guess, use some of the transponder information and kind of trace where these ships are going. And, of course, some of them are maybe being taken over because of the sanctions that have been put on against some of the countries in the West. So it's kind of interesting to see kind of where these ships are docked and getting caught.
Yep.
Interesting. What have you seen recently?
Well, I mean, everything's about the Ukraine invasion, right? There's a ton of stuff going on in the technology world. Yeah, the Russians are turning to Bitcoin for, being able to make transactions since they've been basically shut out of world banking markets. There's a lot of controversy around that. A lot of the Bitcoin company, trading companies like Coinbase and stuff have been asked to stop allowing Russian-based entities to trade on their platforms, and they said no, we don't want to do that because it's basically a violation of what Bitcoin's all about. So that's one thing. Another thing, of course, that we talked about before is the whole Starlink, Elon Musk Starlink thing.
Right.
Elon Musk, they moved fast and they got Starlink sets sent out across the Ukraine and position the satellites and everything, and now Elon Musk is saying there's a high probability that Russian attacks would bring down their Starlink network if Russia decided to go that way. So that kind of an interesting thing too. Also, Ukraine made a request to have ICANN, which is the international authority that's responsible for domains on the internet. Made a request to have ICANN shut down the Russian internet domain, which basically would have cut all Russian-based stuff off the internet. But ICANN's refused to do that for the same reason that the Bitcoin folks have refused to do that. It kind of goes against this idea of being neutral. So, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on, around just this nightmare that's going on in Europe.
Right. Well, and we've seen news about the social media sites in Russia being blocked, right, or unavailable for folks. I think
Yes.
Facebook has had trouble. Some of the journalism laws now that have gone into play. So a lot of the broadcasters and network news from not just this country, but the BBC and some others have removed their correspondence. Some of the print reporters have, or print editions have decided to publish stories, but without a reporter's byline to protect their identities and things like that. So we're seeing kind of a little bit of that going on as well, right, technology-wise.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth with that too, right? So there's a lot of like Russia shutting down these sites in the Soviet Union, and then conversely, there's a lot of outside of Russia, people shutting down Russian things. So one of the Russian news outlets, RT, that people may not realize this, but was largely available in America. They had an entire American branch. They've been basically shut down almost all over the world, and their parent organization in Russia announced just this last week that they surprised everyone and completely shut down RT America. I mean, they basically shut the company down, shuttered the doors, fired all the staff, and sent them all home.
Right.
So that's been fun and interesting as well.
Yeah. Well, I know they lost some of their carriage spots, right, on some of the cable systems, and I think on DirecTV and maybe Dish as well, right? So without that, you really don't have an audience as much, even though you're available online, but it really hits them in the pocketbook, right? Because their advertising isn't as effective and the audience isn't as large, and so that's a problem for those folks. The other things that we've seen, of course, are a lot of the response of the banking industry, credit card industry, right? Visa, MasterCard no longer being available in Russia. Amex, I think, just today announcing they were going to do the same. So really hard it's unfortunate that the Russian citizens are in the middle of this, and all they try and go along their normal lives, and they can't get to an ATM, or their bank isn't working as well, or they can't use their credit cards, and so it's a big inconvenience for the everyday Russians just because of what their government is doing.
Yep.
So there is that.
Now, well, we have some, before we get on to too many other things, there is one story that's completely non-Ukraine related that I caught a week ago, that I think is really important, given our, what we talk about here.
Okay.
So I don't know how many people know this, but for a while now, there's been companies that have made essentially bionic eyes for people who have a certain kind of blindness. And one of those companies is a company called, the product is, Second Sight Products, and the product is an Argus 2 implant, and it basically lets these people see. Well, I thought this was really interesting because it's an example of something that we actually can be afraid of. So the company basically discontinued the product and stopped supporting it. And so literally there's people who are interviewed for this article that were literally like going about their daily lives and suddenly became blind again because the company literally shut the devices off.
Wow. That's
yeah.
concerning. Yeah.
So they interviewed a couple of people, a lady named Barbara Campbell. She says, I remember where I was. I was switching from the 6 train to the F train. I was about to go down the stairs. All of a sudden I heard a little beep, beep, beep sound, and her Argus 2 retinal implant system powered down.
Wow.
And she literally couldn't see. And there's a number of people in this article they interview. So this is interesting. It's not necessarily that I'm trying to put down this company, but it's interesting because it's something that we have to think about. As we start developing products, technological products that help people see, that are things they depend on. How are we going to catch up with that regulatory wise, right? How are we going to catch up with that in a way where we make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen? So it's a story that really caught my eye.
Right. Well, I would think there'd be something to the effect of some type of regulation that if the company's going out of business, that someone should be able to take over that and keep these devices operating because of obviously the problems that it creates for these patients. I'm thinking even artificial hearts and stuff like that. You certainly wouldn't want anything like that to happen. So interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Lewis. Well, thank you. We are out of time, but thank you for joining me this week.
Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great week.
All right, you too. Thank you. That's Lewis Campbell. He is with me every Monday on our Monday Reboot segment right here from KSJE, Farmington, New Mexico.
"150 years ago, the Republic was facing its greatest crisis. This continuing series examines the American Civil War. It is A House Divided.
A Moment in Time with Dan Roberts.
While the American